All right, it's a little early. It's 11:25, but I want to make sure we have enough time to finish this. If you have your test review page and you want to pull it out, fine. If you don't, your call. All right, question number 1 was, what is the purpose of the HR tag? HR stands for horizontal rule. That's what it means. And if you look at the page that I just dummied up part of a page here, so I've got a paragraph that just, I just keep repeating the same sentence, and then an HR between the paragraphs. And if I run this, you'll see the horizontal rule right there. All right. Now, technically, what they give for a definition of this is it defines a thematic change in the content. But it's a placeholder, whatever you want to call it. But it was in the chapter. We did go over it, albeit very shortly. All right, so HR, horizontal rule, okay? Question 2, and I asked you this before. What are the mandatory attributes for the image tag? Technically, the only required attribute is source, but the alt tag is pretty much considered to be required. All right, because again, for screen readers and assisted type of devices. Remember, if you put in the width and if you put in the height, those are recommended because that makes it easier for the browser to figure out how much room to put aside for the image. All right? So technically, the only required one is source. That said, you should, at a minimum, put in source and alt. And again, ideally, you'd add height and width too. We talked about this before. The order in which you put those does not matter. Any questions on number 1 or number 2? All right, number 3. I asked you about this before. What's the difference between a background color and a background image? Can they be used together? How do you configure a background image? So there is that's 2 different questions on the test. One of them is more or less, can you use background images and background colors together? The answer is yes. One is, how do you configure a background image? We'll look at that in a second, and you should know the difference between them. So the background color element sets the background color, what you think it would do. The background image allows you to set a background image. Yes, you can use them together. As I mentioned to you before, you might want to do that if the background image does not cover the entire browser area. Remember, this is the syntax. There is a question in there that shows something like that for either color or image, but I think it's this one. So the idea is it's background-image : URL. I don't believe it's mandatory that you put the double quotes in there, but you should do it anyway. And as some of you have found out already, if you have the image in an images folder, you'll probably have to say images / right? Okay, any questions on that one? Like I said, I just want to make sure we got enough time to go through all these. All right. Number 4, what type of graphic do you use for a logo? Now you should, if you're writing right now, you shouldn't even look up. You should know that. We talked about this yesterday. For a logo, you'd use a GIF because logos have fewer colors. They typically only will support those 256, what are called browser safe colors, and the quality isn't going to be as good. On the other hand, the other 2 types, JPEGs and PNGs, will support up to 16.7 million colors, and they're better for photographs. I don't think there's any question on there that, I don't think she tries to purposely trick you with the questions that are on there. You may or may not agree with that. If you've taken the test, you think, no, some of these questions were tricky. But I don't think she purposely tries to trick you. Questions on number 4? Yes?
Couldn't the big ones also be used for animation? Or is that not as
Can they also be used for what?
for animation?
You probably can. All right. I don't know, but typically when you think of animation, you think of simple animation. That's usually done through GIFs. All right. The web safe color palette, this is kind of, I literally took this right from, I'm not going to read it, but I took it right from Google, and it's not that big a thing anymore. All right. But back in the day, you had it where different browsers or different software basically only supported, some monitors just supported those 256 colors. Now, I didn't do this, but I could Google, give me a list of the web safe colors, and it would give them to you in either color codes or the actual name. Okay?
So, for the answer, just put down $256?
You're not asked what they are, but you're asked something about what the web safe color palette is. All right. Again, it's an older type of thing that's set up with just the basic. The big thing on it is that they should work on any browser, regardless of how old it is. Any browser should support these. So even if for some reason you had somebody with IE2, and I don't know why you would, but if someone had that. Number 6, can you use graphics for navigation? The answer is yes. But, so, again, if I come out here, and let's just say I go out to CNN.com. I can use graphics in here instead of this. So, for instance, if we wanted to, instead of sports, we could have a picture of like a baseball or a bunch of different, you know what I'm saying, that kind of thing. You could have somebody singing, let's say here, but that can wreak havoc for people who are using assisted screen devices. All right, so if you're going to do that, typically if you're going to put pictures up here, then down at the bottom, you will typically add something where they can also do it from the bottom and you'll have links. All right, because there is some kind of a question on there that basically says, it is something like, can you use graphics for navigation? Yes, you can, but again, the special considerations are you have to offer some kind of an alternative to somebody who is sight impaired. Questions on that? Number 7, what is a thumbnail? Okay, you probably have seen examples of thumbnails before. Maybe you've gone out to a web page where maybe you go out to a sports web page and they've got a bunch of little thumbnail pictures there of the different people on the team, whatever the team is. And you click on a thumbnail and it brings a bigger picture up. I will say on one of those exercises that you were asked to do, they asked you to create a thumbnail, and then they asked you to, don't worry about having the thumbnail change to a regular image. If you did it already, fine, but if you don't know how to do it, typically you do that using JavaScript. So I don't know why she put that one in there, okay? But a thumbnail is just a reduced size, and it can be a picture or a video, but it's almost always a picture. Does everybody know what I'm talking about with a thumbnail? Is there anyone who doesn't? If you don't, that's fine. Again, you could just Google it. All right, so here's an example. If I click on this, I get a bigger picture, right? That's a thumbnail. So again, that's the thumbnail version, or if I grab any one of these, if I click on this, boom, I get a bigger version. All right, that's a thumbnail. And they're actually, it's not that important now, but something I use a lot is makeathumbnail.com because it's free. So in other words, if I chose a file here, okay, and I'm going to go over, just so you see this, I'm going to go over to the desktop, and I grab this thing before that I called it Google, no, it was here, no, it's not here, google.ping, all right? And that was this thing that you saw right here, and it literally is like 1075 by 640 or something like that, all right, this thing. This is literally from Google's page. I grabbed it. All right. And if I come through here under makeathumbnail.com and I grab that Google ping and I say I want it to be 100 by 100, make a thumbnail. It makes it and it throws it out there on the internet. So you copy it. Come on. You paste it in, and there it is. And you say, well, you can't see that. It's very small, but now I can save that image, and I can save it as, I don't know what it was, dragon.ping. And when I do that now, and I bring it up, now I could put it in here, and I can change this to dragon.ping. And I can say that it's 100 by 100. And if I save it and run the page again, there it is down there. You see it in the corner here? So that's, you know, by adding a little code, you can click on that and then have this appear. All right. Questions on thumbnails? Probably more than you wanted to know about thumbnails. All right. Number 8. Where do you find free graphics? This is right from the book. Don't worry about writing it down. It literally is right in the book. All right. But one thing that you're asked on there, do you remember what I told you yesterday? What did I say don't do with a graphic? Anybody remember? Never go out to somebody else's site, right mouse click, and do a save image as. Don't do that. It is against the law. All right? If you really want to do that, then you email the party in question and you ask if you can have permission to use their image. Now, if you go out to these sites, they're free. They're royalty free. All right? So basically, you're asked, what can you do? You can take your own images. You can go out to a site like this, or you can buy images. There are sites that have really good images, but you have to pay for them. All right? And a lot of those sites that we have to pay for them, if you go out, a lot of times they'll have 2 or 3 images that are free. But let's say that I wanted to do a thing on race cars. All right? I might be able to go out to a site that had 2 or 3 free ones, but if I wanted some really cool ones, I'd have to pay for them. All right? And, you know, people have been smart enough to figure out that if there's a market out there, there'll be a market. I mean, if I wanted to create a website on something, there's a good chance somebody will have graphics out there already for me. Yeah, they may or may not be free. Okay. The image map, and I was going to show you this. I forgot to. Anybody know what this is? It's an external drive. This holds 2 terabytes, 2 billion bytes of information on it. I've been putting stuff on it for 3 years, and I've got it about 3% filled. All right. And not that I'm a big proponent of them either, but it was a Walmart special. It was $120 on sale for $100. But I'll have to search for what I want to show you in here, so I'm just going to let the system itself search for it. That'll probably take a while. All right, so we'll just keep going on. So an image map, I gave you the example of the United States where you'd have a map of the United States and you could click on any individual state, bring up that state's page. So as it says, it's an image that contains typically several hyperlinks. It'll typically have multiple areas that you can click. Those areas that you click are referred to as hotspots. Not my verbiage, just the verbiage that gets used with it. All right. Okay, so here's the one that I created. If you have an interest, I'll be glad to put it out there. I did it a long, long time ago. But there's Mount Rushmore. Notice you can click on different parts. All right, then that must not be working. But I can click on Washington, notice if I come out here how the mouse changes, but if I click on Washington, I'll go to Washington's homepage, Jefferson's homepage. I don't have to keep going, you get the idea. All right, that's an image map. Number 10, how is the HTML5 progress element used? How is the HTML5 meter element used? There is one or two questions that says the blank is used to do this. And it's either going to be the progress or the meter. There are pictures of these in the book, if you remember that. All right? And I show the progress kind of looks like the progress bar, and I mentioned, like, for example, if you were doing your own GoFundMe page and you wanted to show the progress on the page, you could do a progress bar. Ideally, it would keep going up every day or every week or whatever. All right? And the meter, as it says, it represents some kind of range. And again, I got all that information just by going out and Googling it. Okay? There are 27 questions on this test, but it'll be graded as though there's 25. All right. They do ask you, I don't think they ask much about margin, but they ask what padding is. Remember I showed you that yesterday? Does everybody remember I put the thing on the board where there were two divs? There was one here and there was one here. And this one I didn't touch. I didn't set the margin, I didn't set the padding. But this one, we set the margin. When we set the margin, it moved like over to here. Remember that? Okay. So what the padding is, it's basically if you've got your stuff in here, the area that, so let's say that's an image right there. Let's just say that's an image. That image is in an imaginary box. And this area that's here, 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 and here around the image, that's the padding. The area between this and let's say that's another image. So the area between these two, that area, that's the margin. Does that make sense? So what it's saying in here is the padding is an area around the content. It is part of the thing itself. The margin is the difference between two things. All right? So you can set one, you can set both, you can set neither. Okay? Number 12, what are the options for the image tag repeat? These are all of them. I wouldn't worry about the initial and the inherit, but I tried to be really, tried to show you everything that was in there. But you should know repeat, that's the default, which means show me as many as you can. Remember when I showed you that car yesterday? And that car, we had it a bunch of times on there. That's because it was set to repeat. Repeat X, repeats it along the X axis, so it repeats it horizontally. Repeat Y, does it only vertically. No repeat means don't repeat at all. If you know just these first four, you should be fine. Okay? What is image optimization? When you optimize an image, you're trying to make it the smallest size you possibly can so it still looks good on screen, but it takes up as little space on your hard drive as possible. Does that make sense? So you want it to still show, all right? And I don't know, I don't want to get political on you, so I don't know with any of you, but when you start talking politics, this is the first time in my life, I do plan on voting, but this is the first time in my life I probably won't decide who I'm going to vote for until I step into the voting booth. All right? I really hate Trump, and I don't trust Hillary. But I do have a feeling that if I vote for anybody else, it's a vote for one of those two. So I don't know what I'm going to do. But the point is, let's say that I had it was in here before, that's why I was going to show it to you. There was a big picture on here of Trump before. All right? I think personally, a big picture of Trump would look better as a thumbnail. All right? But that's just me. All right? The point is, when you're optimizing an image, you're trying to make it, so if I show this, this is it right here.
Number one.
Okay? And if I optimized it, I might show it as a thumbnail. So you see it, basically that's what we have down here is the thumbnail. So if I want to go and switch images, I can click on that one and it'll switch to that image. All right? But again, when you are trying to optimize, you're trying to make the whatever it is you're working with, a picture, whatever it is, as small as possible, yet is visually acceptable so people looking at it know what the heck it is. All right? 14, you are asked on there, what is progressive enhancement? All right? Remember, there's two things. There's graceful degradation and there's progressive enhancement. With progressive enhancement, what you do is you assume the person using your website has the bare bones. They've got the worst browser in the world. They've got JavaScript turned off. Their browser is basically a piece of garbage. So you build a site for that. And then you say, but if you have JavaScript, you can also do this. But if you have, if you're using Chrome, the newest version, you can also do this, etc. So that's progressively enhancing it based on what they have. The opposite of that is called graceful degradation, which means you assume they have the best and you degrade downward. So progressive enhancement assumes you have the worst and then adds to it. Okay? And again, if you don't like the answers that I'm giving you here, just go ahead and Google them yourselves. That's fine. For rounded corners, you use the border radius property. And I think it's border dash, yeah it is. Border dash radius. This is one of the questions right from the test. So remember, rounded corners, rounded radius. All right, however you remember this stuff. Number 16, what is opacity? That's how transparent or non-transparent something is. Again, it's a value between 0 and 1. If it's 0, it's totally transparent, so you can see right through it. If it's 1, it's totally opaque. All right? So if you imagine, I think this wall that's between these two classrooms actually comes down so you can like pull it apart there. If it was pulled apart, it'd be transparent. We could see right in there. Right now, unless you've got super X-ray vision, I don't think that any of us can see through there. It's opaque. What's a gradient? It allows you to transition between colors or something else. I mentioned morphing from Barney to Hitler, but usually if you did the exercises in the chapter, you saw that when we did the gradients, it was kind of a purplish, and it went from like almost a white to a more medium purple type of an idea. Notice, it's not a color. All right. Number 18, this is actually, again, one of the questions that's in there. What does HSLA stand for? And the funny thing is, if you do Google it, it's something with alloys for metal. That's not the one you want. All right? Hue, saturation, light or lightness, and alpha. It's another way of doing colors. We talked about 3 or 4 ways of doing colors. If I want to use the color blue, I can use the word blue. I can use $0000FF. All right, I can do that. I can do RGB 00255. All right, I can use HSLA. I don't know exactly what the color would be, but you're asked what those stand for. Hue, saturation, lightness, and alpha. Finally, the last one. No, it's not. How can you resize or scale a background image? Remember that? Because I screwed up on that before. All right. Background size is the way you do it. I'm only showing 19. Is that all I gave you? It was 19 questions on there? Okay. Like I said, I think there's 27 questions on the test. We've covered as far as I know. And I'm going to keep doing this because even if you're trying to fail this class, I'm not going to let you. All right? I want there to be 10 people in here in fall. You all have your own unique talents. Some of you are doing better than others. You should be able to go into in your inside ranking and find out what your grade is right now. By the end of the week, if any of you are running under a C, then I have to go and I have to literally fill out a form, and it's some kind of a request I have to send in where they'll come talk to you and say, hey, you know, and Ethan, it's not you, but they say, hey, Ethan, you know, he's not running under a C, but you're running under a C, and is there anything we can do to help you? Type of an idea. All right? The last thing I'll tell you, just so you know, if there's